Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another 4 p.m. Bible study, a second look Bible study, where a second look always takes you deeper into God's Word. Right now, we are working our way through the Old Testament. The title of the series is Understanding the Old Testament, and we're providing a kind of a overview of each book of the Old Testament, but most importantly, we're wanting to see how all of the books of the Old Testament fit together. And I want to help you to understand the overall story of the nation of Israel. Well, I'm glad you're here, and today we are going to be looking at the book of Daniel. Now, for the last quite a few lessons, I have started with a 5 out of 5 Bible study. And today we're going to do the same thing. Now, I've already given you the questions on Facebook, and that is to hopefully give you a little head start. So let me share with you the 5 questions. Question number 1 is, which Old Testament book introduces the patriarchs and the beginning of the nation of Israel? Which Old Testament book introduces the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and the beginning of the nation of Israel? Question number 2. Whose name was changed to Israel? Whose name was changed to Israel? Question number 3. Which king of Israel had half a heart for God? If you remember our walk through the Bible cartoon pictures, one of the kings was pictured with half a heart. Who was he? Question number 4. How many kings after Solomon in the kingdom of Israel were good kings? How many kings after Solomon in the kingdom of Israel, not Judah, in the kingdom of Israel were good? Give me your answer there. And then question number 5. Who was the evil wife of King Ahab? Who was the evil wife of King Ahab? Let's have one bonus question, because some of these were rather difficult. The bonus question is, who was Belteshazzar? Who was Belteshazzar? What name do we know him under? All right, let's take a look and see who perhaps has joined us today. And we'll see what kind of responses they came up with. Place your answers in the comments, either on Facebook or during the YouTube video, and would love to see how you're doing. All right. I don't see my post going up yet. I'm not quite sure why. It says I'm live. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Let's back out and try it one more time. Well, I'm going to go ahead assuming that it's working, even though I can't seem to call it up on my phone. So question number 1 is, which Old Testament book introduces the patriarchs in the beginning of Israel? The answer is Genesis. Genesis is where we find the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Whose name was changed to Israel? That would have been Jacob. The word Israel means to wrestle with God, and Jacob was the one who wrestled with God, and God changed his name. Hence, his children, moving forward, will be known as the children of Israel rather than the children of Jacob. That's where we get the Israelite nation. Question number 3 is, which king of Israel had half a heart for God? That would have been King Solomon. All right, and we'll see that picture here in just a moment. Question number 4. How many kings after Solomon in the kingdom of Israel were good? And the answer is 0. None of them were good. And then the fifth question was, who was the evil wife of King Ahab? That would have been Jezebel, Queen Jezebel. And then the bonus question was, who was Belteshazzar? And that is the Aramaic or the Babylonian name for Daniel. That's Daniel. So let's go ahead and dive right in to our study today. I've been showing you this timeline, and you can see that we have just finished covering the period of time of the kings. You'll see the purple crown there, and it's the kingdom portion of Israel's history. It started with 1 Samuel, King Saul, 2 Samuel, King David, 1 Kings, King Solomon, 2 Kings, all the kings of Judah and Israel. And then we have a repeat of these books in 1st and 2nd Chronicles, but from a different perspective. It is looking at them from God's perspective, all right? So let's review each of these very quickly. First Samuel was King Saul, no heart for God. 2 Samuel, 2 Samuels in the picture. King David had a whole heart for God, and we know it's David from the harp and the sling. The book of 1 Kings, that is King Solomon. He was known for his wisdom, for the number of wives that he had, and his wealth. And you will notice that the picture shows the bag of gold in his hand is split in two because we see the kingdom of Israel divided into two kingdoms, Israel to the north, Judah to the south, following King Solomon's death. And then the book of 2 Kings is where we learn about the kingdoms of Judah, the kingdoms of Israel, and the exile that took place and displaced both of these kingdoms. We then went on to 1 Chronicles, which is an editorial on King David, how God felt about King David. And then 2 Chronicles is a second editorial looking at how God feels about the southern kingdom of Judah. It does not really deal with the northern kingdom of Israel at all. So here is a diagram of the books of the Old Testament. We've covered the books of the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So far in the books of history, we have covered Joshua conquering the land, the Judges period, where the area was ruled by 10 judges, the book of Ruth, the love story, and then, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Now, there are 3 more books of history, as you can see in the diagram. There's Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. So why did I pause here and jump over to Daniel, who is one of the major prophets? You will notice that we have additional books to cover, books of poetry, which were from David and Solomon, by and large. The major prophets of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentations, Ezekiel, and Daniel. We're going to move Daniel into our timeline right now because Daniel lived during the exile. Let's look again at that timeline. All right, we're in the time of the exile. So what we're doing is we're studying the Old Testament history and putting the books in their proper place. Now, this is really a tricky thing to do because, truthfully, all of the major prophets are going to fit into the period of time of the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. But for now, stay with me. We're going to look at this area of Daniel and Ezekiel. They are our next 2 books. So, we've talked about how that the kingdom of Israel, the 10 tribes to the north, they were destroyed, carried into captivity by the Assyrian Empire in 722 BC. And what takes place there is the kingdom will cease to exist. The southern kingdom were two tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and there were a number of good kings in there, but by and large they disobeyed God. And all of the prophets are going to be warning them about what is to come. And what is to come are the Babylonians. And the Babylonians will conquer the southern kingdom, will carry their people off as slaves to Babylon. That will be in about 586 BC. In the area of Babylon, two individuals are going to rise to the forefront. That is Daniel and Ezekiel, as you can see in our chart. Now, the book of Daniel, its walk through the Bible picture looks something like this. Daniel is asleep on a lion. He is in exile. He is in a lion's den, and he is finding out that God is in control. Really, that's the big picture for the book of Daniel. God is in control. Now, next week, we'll look at the book of Ezekiel. And one of the primary messages in Ezekiel are dry bones, and it is to remind us that Israel will live again. This is an important message for the people to hear because they're in exile. They have been conquered by the Babylonians. Their temple has been destroyed. Their city has been destroyed. And Ezekiel and Daniel are trying to let them know that God is in control and Israel will live again. All right. Let's get ready to take a quick look at some of the key people that we meet in the book of Daniel. I wish I had time to get into this book in the detail that it deserves. If you'd like a series of lessons on Daniel, let me know in the comments. Again, sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of a flu bug here. Now, the key people in Daniel that I want to draw your attention to are, number one, Daniel, or as he's known by his Babylonian name, it is Belteshazzar. Belteshazzar. That is his name, but we know him as Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar will refer to him as Belteshazzar, but Daniel is the name we are most familiar with. The king at the time of the exile was Nebuchadnezzar. He was the Babylonian king that conquered Jerusalem, and he's later humbled by God. And I'll share that story with you in just a few moments. The book continues, and we meet another king of Babylon, a man by the name of Belshazzar. Belshazzar. He is the last of the Babylonian rulers. He is known for his infamous blasphemous feast where he takes the objects, holy objects from the temple of Jerusalem that his father had stolen, and there was the mysterious handwriting on the wall with the prediction that his kingdom would end, and it did so that very night. Well, the next king we meet in the book of Daniel is the king Darius the Mede. What's going to take place is Babylon, or Babylonian Empire, is going to be overthrown by the Medo-Persian Empire. It is a combination of the Medes and the Persians. And Darius the Mede is the Persian ruler, and he is going to come on the scene. He's going to admire Daniel, but he's going to be deceived into sentencing him to death in a den full of lions. You know the story, all right? And then the fourth king that we will meet in the book of Daniel is King Cyrus. He is the one that's going to come to the throne after Darius the Mede. He was predicted or foretold by Jeremiah that he would be the king that would come to power, and he would let the Jewish people return back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city and to rebuild the temple. So those are the key people in the book of Daniel. Let's look at the major events now. At the very beginning, chapter 1, we meet Daniel and a number of others who have been brought to Babylon as slaves. And they rise in power because of their abilities. It was Daniel and his friends. We know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those are their Babylonian names. They're taken to Babylon and they're trained in its ways. And yet they maintain a fierce loyalty to their God. We find in chapter 3 the story of these three Hebrews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refusing to worship a statue that has been set up, and they're thrown into a fiery furnace, and God miraculously preserves them. I kind of jumped over chapter 2. Maybe I ought to go back and take a quick look at that, because in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And in this dream, he sees a giant statue. And he is told by all, in fact, he doesn't know what the dream is. He doesn't understand what it means. He calls for all of the wise men, and nobody can tell him what the dream means. He finally calls Daniel, and Daniel happens to say to him, in fact, I jotted it down because I thought it was so important. In Daniel chapter 2, verse 27, Daniel says to him, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain the king the mystery he is asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." Again, can't you see the big idea here? There's a God in heaven, all right, who understands all mysteries, and he raises up kings and he puts down kings. He's in charge of the world. I know, Nebuchadnezzar, you think you have destroyed Israel, and in doing so you've destroyed their God. But the truth is, God is still in control, and you were only allowed to capture the nation of Judah because God permitted it. It's God's punishment for the Jews. And so Daniel then explains the meaning of the giant statue. First of all, there's a head of gold. And Daniel says, "King Nebuchadnezzar, you are that head of gold." The next part of this giant statue is a chest and iron of silver, and then a belly and thigh of bronze, and then the legs of iron, and then the feet and toes of iron and clay. Daniel explains that each of these represent a kingdom that will come to power. Now we know through history that after the Babylonians, when they fell to the Medo-Persian Empire, and that's the chest and arms of silver. And then the belly and thigh of bronze was the Greek Empire, led by Alexander the Great. And then the legs of iron represented the Roman Empire. And so Daniel is showing in his book that God's in charge, because God is going to allow these various empires to come into existence. Now, this is going to be repeated in other parts of the book of Daniel, and again, I don't have time to go into great detail there. But I want you to see what's taking place here. So after the giant image in chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar builds an image and requires everybody to worship it, and that's where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, refusing to do so, are thrown into the fiery furnace. And then in chapter 4, we have a great story of Nebuchadnezzar's humbling. The king is driven to insanity until he acknowledges God's authority. Well, what is that story all about? I'd like to share it with you very quickly. It's a very unusual story in the Hebrew Bible because it is not written in Hebrew. It is written in Aramaic, which is the language of the Babylonian Empire. And it seems to be written not by Daniel, but by Nebuchadnezzar himself. So Nebuchadnezzar is narrating here in this 4th chapter of Daniel his own story. Let's look at it real quick. In Daniel 4, King Nebuchadnezzar has a troubling dream. Seems to have this problem quite a bit, doesn't he? He dreams this time of a massive flourishing tree that reaches the heavens. And in the dream, a holy messenger decrees that that giant tree must be cut down, leaving only its stump bound with iron and bronze. Daniel interprets his dream and says that this symbolizes Nebuchadnezzar's looming humiliation. His kingdom, according to Daniel, is going to be stripped away, and he will live like an animal until he acknowledges that Daniel's God is sovereign. Soon after that, the dream is fulfilled, and Nebuchadnezzar is struck with what many scholars believe would be boanthropy, which is a rare psychological disorder that causes him to behave like an ox. His hair grows like eagle feathers and his nails like bird claws, and he grazes on grass. He loses his royal authority. Some scholars also propose that his condition could have been a form of lycanthropy, where individuals believe they have been transformed into an animal. What we know from this text is it was a mental condition, and these mental conditions even exist today. Now, after a period of time, 7 times pass, Nebuchadnezzar lifts his eyes to heaven, and he regains his sanity, and he praises God, and he declares his dominion is an everlasting dominion. That's Daniel 4:34. His experience serves as a powerful lesson about human pride crumbling before divine authority and true wisdom that comes from recognizing God's rule over everything. So we have these stories that have taken place. There's a couple of others that I think you need to be aware of. In chapter 5, there is the mysterious inscription written on the wall foretelling the Babylonian fall. And that very night in Daniel 5, we see the Babylonians are going to be overrun. We're going to meet in the next chapter, Daniel, in chapter 6. There's a royal decree. Daniel is told that he's not permitted to pray. And if he does, he'll be thrown to the lions. And Daniel continues to pray to his God. But what happens? God shuts the mouth of the lions, and David is spared. And then in chapters 7 through 12, Daniel receives visions of future kingdoms and the rise of the Son of Man, which is Jesus Christ. It's a fabulous book that I think is really worth our time. Now, how does the book of Daniel fit into the overall or the big picture story? Well, what I want you to see is, first of all, this idea of Daniel and how Daniel is going to be the one who is faithful to God in spite of opposition. He remains true to God, and God lifts him up and brings him to a position of authority in the kingdom of Babylon. He's going to have a number of dreams, and those dreams are all going to come to fruition. And so that's kind of our big picture there. Daniel is going to bridge the gap between the historical and the prophetic traditions of the Old Testament. His life is going to exemplify faithfulness in the midst of exile. It's a theme crucial to Israel's history. His visions are going to echo earlier prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah, while paving the way for New Testament revelations, in particular the book of Revelation. The book of Daniel is kind of a companion book to the book of Revelation. What Revelation is to the New Testament, Daniel is to the Old Testament. Now, a couple of key verses. In Daniel 21 and 22, oh, by the way, here's a quick picture of artist's conception of what Nebuchadnezzar may have looked like during his period of time. Some of the key verses there in Daniel are Daniel 2:21. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. And then in Daniel 6:22, Daniel is stating these words, "My God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him." And finally in Daniel 7, verses 13 and 14, a powerful vision of the coming Messiah. "I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, there came one like a son of man. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall never pass away." Who do you think that might be? That's Jesus Christ himself. So the book of Daniel is a testament to God's control over history and his faithfulness to his people, even while they're in exile. It's themes of divine sovereignty and prophetic fulfillment that is necessary to understand both Jewish history and Christian eschatology. You need to read the book of Daniel again and again and again, because it shows that our God is in control. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. If you're still on Facebook, please leave some comments there. I'll see if I can get mine to work on this end and communicate with you. I want to thank you for taking your time and watching today. A reminder that all the videos are uploaded to my YouTube channel. Please check the link and stop by there, subscribe, like the videos. All of that is very much appreciated. Want you to know you are loved. Hope you have a wonderful day. God bless you.